everybody. I'm Anne-Christine Diaz, creativity editor at Ad Age, and I'm here with Alexandra Jardine, who's our associate creativity editor, and she's in the UK.
Hi.
So today, it's our second day of our Future of Creativity Week. We started out yesterday with a fantastic set of events. We had the winners of our creativity awards, so make sure to check those out. They're all fabulous examples of how the industry should keep moving forward, or great examples of what it means to be in this industry. And we also had some really hard-hitting talks with the leaders of Droga 5, Wyden and Kennedy, Adam and Eve, DDB, and Saturday Morning. So if you haven't seen those, you should definitely check those out. Today, we're going to focus on craft. And we have presentations from Fernando Machado from RBI and Anselmo Ramos of Gut, talking about their relationship over the years, doing fantastic work for a lot of clients. And we have the creators of the Apple Bounce Spot, which is an exquisite piece of work. And we also have a director's roundtable with Cal Maddock, Kim Garrick, and Henry Alex Rubin from Smuggler, and a behind the scenes on IKEA Visibles from the team at McCann. So before we start, I want to thank our presenting sponsor, Verizon Media, and our supporting sponsors, Ad Council, the It Gets Better Project, the Miami Ad School, and the Female Quotient. So now I'll kick it off to Alex to get the day going.
Hi, good morning. So I'd like to welcome to the stage Fernando Machado, who is the Global CMO for Restaurant Brands International, and Anselmo Ramos, who's the founder and chief creative officer of Gut. And Fernando and Anselmo have worked together for the best part of a decade as client and agency partners. And they've partnered on award-winning work like Dove's Real Beauty Sketches, Burger King's Proud Whopper, and Google Home of the Whopper. And now they're working together on Popeyes. So they are going to talk about how they met, how their client and agency relationship developed, and how their work has evolved over the years. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to them to talk about that. And if anyone has any questions, please ask them on our social channels, and I will jump in with some of your questions as they're talking, and I'll give you a shout out, and I'll jump in with some more questions at the end. So over to you guys. Do you want to tell us how this beautiful relationship started?
Awesome. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us, yeah.
Thank you.
Anselmo, the hair is looking pretty long, huh?
But it looks good, right?
You know, it doesn't, but like, you know that they are reopening now, right? You can actually book
that was my
and go have a haircut. Do you want me to book it for you? I just booked one for me. I'm
going for a David Lynch here.
Okay. I think it's funny, like, to hear like that we've been partnering for almost like 10 years. We're starting to get old, I guess, right? Look at the number of look at the amount of gray.
Yeah, we're pretty old, man.
Yeah, I cannot even let my beard grow. Like, also to look like gray like yours. So how should we start? Like, I'm gonna talk about how we've met.
Yeah, let's talk briefly about that. You know, because we met at the dance floor, so it's really embarrassing. So let's just go very quickly over that, and then let's talk about creativity.
Yeah,
but basically, you want to tell the story?
No, you go. Because like I was just saying that it's funny that today is probably the week that Cannes would be happening, right?
Oh, it's our anniversary then.
Yes, exactly.
It's very special.
Yeah, and we've met like during Cannes in 2011 or 12. Yeah, 12.
It was
so yeah, so you go. Sorry, interrupted you.
Yeah, it was basically at the dance floor. It was 2 a.m. and Erica, she was the global head for Dove. She says, there's this client that wants to meet you. I'm like, Erica, I'm dancing, you know? And she's like, well, this one is special. And I'm like, well, every client says they're special. And she's like, no, this one is really special. I'm like, okay, whatever. So I met Fernando. I stopped dancing. I met him for like 10 seconds. And we exchanged numbers, and then I went back to dancing. That's how we met at the dance floor, and then he invited me to go to London to tell. Basically, at that point, he was working on Dove. He invited me to tell the Dove team what I thought about the brand, and I basically went there and I asked him, "Hey, can I say whatever I want?" And he said, "Sure, just go for it." And at that point, I just told them, I think the work is terrible. I don't think we're doing great work. Um, the last great piece of work you did was as a team was evolution, and now, it's not good. And then, basically he said, great, you came here, you provoked us. Now here's a brief, and the brief was pretty simple. The brief was one line. Let's make women feel more beautiful. That was literally the brief. And then I remember that I went back to the agency. I was at Ogilvy, Brazil at that time. And I called everyone and I said, guys, we have a problem. I just basically promised a global client a Grand Prix can. And that was the beginning of our relationship.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you were as harsh as you described yourself. And I think you forgot a couple of details. Like Erica was introducing me to you because back then Ogilvy São Paulo was on fire. You guys were cleaning up with some Unilever brands. With it was like 2-3 very strong years, I would say, for Ogilvy São Paulo. Even like just considering Dove. In the year that Sketches won, you guys also won a Grand Prix, I think, in direct, maybe with sport, right? I mean, am I right about that?
Yeah,
it was 2013. Yeah, so like the agency was like on fire, and Erica, who is awesome, and she's not at Ogilvy anymore, but like I think that she was awesome in the sense that she wanted Ogilvy to work as a true global agency and have us as a client tap into like all the offices that were doing the best work, instead of just having us working with Ogilvy London and Ogilvy New York or Ogilvy Chicago, which traditionally have done the work for the brand. So she was able to cut through the crap and to the politics and bureaucracy that's natural to any like big company like Unilever or like Ogilvy. And we were like talking directly with like some of the best creatives on the network. And when Anselmo came, he didn't really like trash talk the work like he described. I mean, he made us feel really good about the bad work that we're doing first, so he was complimenting like the fact that we're doing really well with product shots, that we're doing really well with like with leveraging with women to create reactions and this and that, which like made some people feel good, and they don't even realize he was being ironic about the fact that we are not really like bringing to the table powerful big ideas. And yeah, like I think that towards the end of his presentation, he had a chart, really like poorly formatted and like ugly chart. Well, he's a copywriter, right? So like really ugly chart showing that the place where Dove belongs was like on Lumiere, together with like other iconic brands that were doing amazing work back then. And then he said, "Oh, great! I mean, we agree with that. So let's work together and show us what you're capable of." And honestly, like Ogilvy São Paulo didn't disappoint. Like they had a really strong team, and they come up with more than just sketches. Like we had a couple of really strong ideas that were presented, and that was how it all started. I cannot think about a better start than starting a client agency, which we don't really use those terms, but like starting like a creative partnership with Real Beauty Sketches as like the first piece, first execution that's done. And then there were lots of people involved, lots of very talented people. And then we took it from there. We still did like another round of work for Dove, which was really good, but lived kind of like on the shade of Sketches because Sketches was so big. I left Unilever to go to Burger King. Back then, there was no Restaurant Brands International. It was just Burger King. Restaurant Brands International started to exist when there was the acquisition of Tim Hortons and then Popeyes. So now we have 3 brands. And then as soon as I landed on Burger King, Anselmo with Gaston and Musa created kind of like a spin-off from Ogilvy called David, and we immediately started to work together for Burger King, right? I mean, from day one. I remember calling Anselmo and asking him for advice. Hey, like I have a really good offer from Burger King. I think It's a brand that has done historically really like amazing work. I grew up looking up at the work that Crispin Porter, Bugowski, CPB did for Burger King, and I was crazy enough to think that maybe we could do work that was at that caliber. And then I was asking for his advice, and he's very like honest and always like very mature person that like tends to give good advice. So his advice was don't go because like they it's a very tough category and they only want to do retail work. And I heard everything he had to say. I was in front of a pub. It was rainy, like a cheesy image from London, but that was the case that day. And then I heard everything he said. I thanked him, and then 10 minutes later, I called him back to say that I accepted the job. And then he was like, "This will be a great challenge, and like count with me to help." And I did, like, and that's why we started to do the work together from day one.
That's basically our relationship. He just does the opposite, I say,
and vice versa.
Yeah, but it's really interesting that we are working. It's the third time that we work as a client and agency. We don't even like to say client and agency. We say partners in crime because we want the same thing. The first time was with Dove, the second time was with Burger King, and now is with Popeyes. And
it's Popeyes and Tim's, right? I mean,
Popeyes and Tim's. So we have two brands working now because we'll work with Burger King, Tim Hortons, and Popeyes. So, but it's really interesting how we do believe that together we can do great work, with basically any brand. So, Fernando, you have a quote from Paulo Coelho, which is a really cheesy, self-help Brazilian writer.
Yes, I really like him.
What's the quote?
I think that it's on The Alchemist. Maybe it's the wrong book, but I think it's The Alchemist, where he says, there are things in life that only happen one time and they may never happen again. And I can name like many of those. But if something happens twice, it will definitely happen a third time. And like, I know Paulo Coelho is a bit cheesy. I still like him. And I think that this like a way of thinking, it's very true, and we made it happen on Dove. Not just the two of us, there was like lots of really good people that are not working today with us, like Hugo and Diego, Vero, Steve Miles was my boss on Dove. But we made it happen again with BK, with a very strong team and new additions to the team, like Hick and Juan, like a lots of people that joined during that David time. And now we've got, doing the work for Popeyes. We got our agents of record for the brand, which is a big deal for us. Popeyes is a brand that's flying, even under the context of COVID. The brand is growing like 30-40%. This is public information. I'm not disclosing anything new. I mean, there was a statement coming from our CEO disclosing a little bit of the performance. And with Tim Hortons in Canada, which is a brand that's loved by Canadians. Like it's like more than just a brand, it's a religion in Canada, Tim Hortons. So it's a big responsibility, like 2 out of the 3 brands that we have are with that team. There are lots of people on the team that used to work for BK before. Hick and Juan are there. Paulo is there. I mean, I still remember that Paulo was the first person I've met when I came to visit David, São Paulo. I still have like on my Instagram, like I'm reminded of like the fact that I went and have like I went to like how do I say, like a padaria, like a breakfast place with Paulo on that morning. So we have history together, and I think that we're already doing some really good work for Popeyes. And if I compare the work that we did for BK on year 1 and how it evolved to be what it is today, with the work that we are doing for Popeyes, which is already very strong, even at the beginning. We have a very talented CMO for Popeyes, which is Paloma, who started at the beginning of the year. We have a very strong marketing team in the US with Felipe, with Bruno. So I think that the sky is the limit, and I'm sure we're going to do amazing things with Popeyes, with Hope, who is the CMO for Tim Hortons in Canada. So I'm very excited about this new phase of the partnership.
Hi guys, I'm just going to come in here. I've got a few shout outs on social. So we've got Telman from Turkey, Dylon from South Africa, Lohit from India, Marianne from Georgia, Sherry from Texas, Tessa from California, Charles from New York, and Kasaba from Romania. So we've got a really international bunch of people watching us here. And another one from Nepal as well.
We have lots coming down there.
That's very cool. Yeah. Very cool. I just want to pick up on you were just talking a little bit about how your work evolved over the years. And I wondered if you could expand on that a bit in terms of the type of work that you've done over the years. And particularly, I think more recently on Burger King and Popeyes. I mean, both of them are fast food brands. So how hard was it to do something different, say, with Popeyes from the kind of thing you've been doing on Burger King, and not just kind of say, let's repeat that and do it again because it was successful?
I think that it all starts, I mean, every time we start to do work for a new brand, the first thing that we do is to sit together and make sure that we have a clear understanding about what the brand is about. That was the case with Dove. That was the case with BK. Back in 2014, when we started doing the BK work, we spent a lot of time working on positioning for the brand, values and personality, and then we started to execute against that to almost test whether the position that we developed was right. For Popeyes, I mean, it was a brand that needed to have a bit of a refresh. So I started working on the brand around mid of last year. The chicken sandwich was coming, which was which was amazing because it completely changed the brand. There is a before and after chicken sandwich for Popeyes. But the process was similar in the sense that we spent time doing positioning work, values and personality of the brand. We like to do stuff that's unique to the brand, and Popeyes is a brand that's very rich in history, in heritage. It's a brand that comes from Louisiana, New Orleans, and kind of an embodiment of that spirit, a spirit that even when you're going through a tough time, you are optimistic. I think it's very different than BK. BK is much more out there, edgy, bold. Popeye can be edgy and can be bold, but its own way. I think that there are elements that we continue to do and leverage, like tapping into what's happening out there, having the finger on the pulse of pop culture, but the execution and how the brand manifests itself is different. We've learned a lot, right? I mean, from the work we did, I think that we've learned to not be afraid of being daring and trying different things. I think we've learned to do multiple things at the same time. I think we've learned to be very nimble. I think we've learned more and more to trust on each other. There were many ideas that I didn't think they would work, but we end up doing because the creative team believed on it, and the creative team proved to be right. So I think that this is only possible if you have a strong relationship, and a strong relationship is something that stands the test of time. Sorry, I spoke too much, and someone I want to what else? Do you agree?
Yeah, you were speaking a lot.
Yeah, sorry.
So here's the thing. I think at the beginning of our relationship, regardless of the brand, once you agree, what the brand is all about, the brand positioning, the brand personality, and all that, then it's all about having fun. So we are a bunch of ad nerds at the agency, right? And Fernando is also an ad nerd. He's a client ad nerd, which is rare. So we are just, we just push each other all the time. Hey, what about this? What about that? What if we do this? It's constantly talking about the brand because we deeply care about what we do. We like advertising. We're not cynical about it. We just love it. And so we're always talking about it. We're always pushing each other. And there's a lot of trust, and when there is trust and when there's understanding about the brand, you tend to do more things. And when you do more things, every once in a while, you get it right. We also get it wrong. We don't get right all the time. but we do a lot of ideas, and every time we do an idea, we get better, we learn. So we believe in doing a lot, and that's what we try to do with our clients. We're always pushing them. In the case of Fernando, we're pushing each other all the time, which is different.
I think that, like, it's not just that, right? I mean, you say that I'm ad nerd and all that, but I also feel that you guys have a genuine interest about my consumer, my business, and the difficulties that I have. It's like, I think it goes both ways. Like, I see sometimes many agencies saying like, oh, like this client doesn't approve anything, he doesn't do anything, which might be true, but I wonder how much they try to understand what the client is going through, and like and help the client influence people internally, and even like understand deeply like what are the business challenges, the priorities, the strategy of the company, like to make sure that the ideas that are coming, they come not just against a specific objective that is real and needed, but also are presented in a way that will help the client sell it internally. You know what I mean? And I think you guys do that.
Yeah, but also, yes, we try to understand as much as we can about the client's business, but also, like, for instance, in your case, you speak both client and agency, right? English, you are still learning, right? You and me, we're still learning English.
Yes,
but
that's why I understand each other.
You speak client, yeah, but you speak client fluently, and you speak agency fluently. Like, you probably know that D&AD doesn't have a writing, category anymore, because that's who you are. But internally, you talk about ROI and same store sales. So you speak both languages fluently. And a lot of times, clients don't speak agency, and agencies don't speak client, and that's part of the problem.
Yeah, I think that there is a question on the chat from Casio, from I think it's YouTube. What was the turning point of your creative partnership? I think that the turning point was sketches, right? From the moment it got presented. I think that our relationship had many milestones, but I think that the turning point was the whole sketches thing. From bringing you to London, to briefing, to the creative presentation, where Steve and I immediately said, yes, we are going to do this, even though we don't know if it's going to work. And we gave a lot of creative freedom to you guys to make it happen. And then tasting the success of sketches and the 24 Lions that it won, and and seeing the world talking about it, right? I mean, there was no, like, after that, it was like, we need more of that. I cannot live as a one-hit wonder. It's Paulo Coelho again. You know what I mean? Like, there are people who, there are people who will never have sketches, but there's some that will have one sketches. But I think that our ambition was to do again and again, and almost like have a process that would lead us to a process in a team that will lead us to keep doing better and more and more and more, like all the time.
I think the turning point was exactly our first presentation, like client agency. It was sketches. You asked me, but do you know if this is going to work? And I said, I have no idea. Okay, I don't know if this is going to work. And then you said, okay, so the only way to find out is by actually doing it, right? I'm like, yes, basically. You have to do it. And then, if it works, great. If it doesn't, we're going to learn something. And that, to me, was a defining moment of our relationship. And we've been talking about that, about trust, uncertainty. And we like the feeling. When we find something that we don't know what's going to happen, that's just very, very powerful, because a lot of times it means that it hasn't been done before. So that to me was the defining moment.
Yeah, I think we have another question from social. How do you maintain the balance of being an ad nerd and being effective? How to avoid being just creative for creative's sake? Well, I think it I think it starts with having an understanding of what the strategy is and what we're trying to accomplish. We always use as filters, right? We even have that in presentations. This is the position of the brand. So when I'm seeing an idea, I first check against the positioning of the brand. And if it's not on brand, I don't do it. The second one is, does it fit a strategic objective that we have? So is this idea helping me with the business, with the brand, or whatever I'm trying to accomplish as a company or as a brand? If it doesn't, why will we do it? It's just a waste of money. And number three is, will people talk about this? Will people share? Will it get coverage from press and media, all that? Because I need that, because my budget is limited. So having an idea that has voltage and will get talked about becomes like a dollar multiplier on my media plan. And I think that being an ad nerd is not at odds with effectiveness. On the contrary, I became an ad nerd because I believe that creativity produces a better outcome. I became an ad nerd because I believe, as a business guy, that creativity can be a source of competitive advantage for my brand and for my company. And we've proven that again and again and again. Sketches was the Grand Effie in North America based on effectiveness. All the stuff that we did, Mac Whopper for Burger King was the Grand Effie in North America based on effectiveness. The biggest shareholder of my company is 3G Capital. It's a private equity group. I wish my bonus were paid in lions, but it isn't. It's paid in sales. So I need to deliver the results. I've been here for 6 years and a half now. Like a CMO, I think these days the average tenure is like 18 months, if I recall correctly. I think there is even an article from Ad Age on that. I think it's like 18 months, but I think that you probably not survive a year on the job if you're not delivering results. But being an ad nerd will help you with criteria, which is one of the key aspects, I would say, of doing, one of the key ingredients that you probably need to do good work.
I actually have a question for you, Fer.
Yeah.
I think, I say that we as an agency, we're nothing without brave clients. We're really nothing, okay? And it's a partnership. But, every other week I get a call from a potential client, and the call usually goes like this. Hey, I'm the brand manager of, brand X, and I want to be your Fernando Machado, on this brand. And I'm like, whoa, you don't know what you're talking about. But so what would you tell those brand managers that call me, like literally saying, I want to be your Fernando Machado of this brand? What would you tell them?
I think that, first of all, I feel very flattered when I hear something like that. But my advice would be for people to try to be the best version of themselves, and do it their own way, and do it different, and be successful with the raw material that they have. I'm shaped a certain way because I grew up in a certain way, because my parents had certain interests that influenced the way I think and what I like. And then I went through a marketing school within Unilever with amazing leaders and coaches like Simon Clift, like Steve Miles, like Silvia Lagnado, who shaped like the way I think and the way I am. I think that if you want to succeed on the job, at any job, it's not just a marketing job, I think you need to be obsessed about what you're doing. Like, I love the work we do. I love our industry. I love marketing. I love advertising. I love design. So to me, it doesn't feel like a chore to watch stuff, to read stuff, to look at stuff, and to invest time to do things, because I enjoy and I have fun. And that started at a very early age. I grew up like watching ads and look at design and doing all sorts of things that helped me with my criteria, and helped me develop like a point of view on things, and got me closer to some people who were way more creative than I was, from whom I could learn. So you need to be that obsessed. It's not easy. Like, we work really hard, like it's unreasonable hours, but I enjoy it, so it doesn't feel like a pain, and I think that if you do that, you probably become more confident. You're going to try different things, and you're going to learn over time and do better work over time. If I show you my reel from when I started my career, it's not great. It took me 10 years to still like an ad I did like a year after I did it. I would do a campaign and think like, oh, this is amazing. And then a year after, it would be like, what the hell I was thinking? Because I was learning so much. So I would say like, great. I mean, that you have an aspiration to be someone recognized in the industry. Find your own way. Be obsessed about the stuff that you like, and try to become the best at that. That would be my advice.
Hey guys, we've got some more shout outs here from around the world. We've got Maria from New York City watching, Lee John from California, C from Malaysia, Rafa from Texas, Jason from Hong Kong, Sergio from Brazil, and Christina from Alabama. So thank you guys for watching. And a couple of questions here as well. Question from Charles on LinkedIn. Can you speak about how the diverse thinking in both your companies has led to some of the more creative ideas for brands, especially like Burger King? I think that's something that's pretty topical at the moment. So, Fernando, do you want to talk about that first?
Yeah, I think that there is diverse thinking and there is diversity and inclusion, which can be similar but also separate topics, right? I think that if I talk about Burger King or RBI, I think we are in a journey for diversity and inclusion. I think we can be much more diverse in terms of gender, like skin color, religion, age, than we are. And we know that the more diverse an environment is, the more creative it will be, because you will have like different points of view on the table. So we've started this journey like a couple of years ago. I think we did make some progress on LGBTQ. We did make some progress on gender. I think we're still lag behind when it comes to, for instance, like having more African Americans on the team and all that. And I think we need to accelerate that, because at least from my perspective, like the more our team reflects the consumer that we serve, the more insightful they will be in terms of offering things to that consumer that are going to work. So it's a business reason on top of everything, you know. So if you don't believe on anything, just believe that you're going to make better business if you have a more diverse group. I think that
we have somebody actually asking on social as well about how many people in your teams are from diverse backgrounds, especially on the fast food brands.
Yeah, look, I don't have the numbers here at my fingertips, but like we are based in Miami, so we have a very large percentage of Hispanic Latino in the team. We probably have something like 5 to 10% African American. I'm talking about my team, yeah, which is around 50 people, global marketing, which could be higher than that. I mean, I think that general population in the US is 14% African American, so we under index on that. Female, I mean, we have a good, like, I think it's okay to good gender balance. I mean, my CMO for Popeyes is Paloma. Our CMO for Tim Hortons is Hope. So we have good representation, maybe at very senior levels of the organization, like the board of the organization, we can have more. And we are working on that, you know, like we have like concrete plans, which are internal plans on how we are going to improve diversity and inclusion. I mean, we spent a whole day talking about that last week as a board. So it's a big deal for us. This Thursday, we have a town hall with the entire company, which will be all focused on diversity and inclusion, kind of like it's probably like the day before Juneteenth. I think it's a topic like everywhere these days, and we started on this journey like a couple of years ago. Going back to the question, yeah, I think that some of the work that we did in the past was indeed powered by diverse thinking. You know, like I think that, and that's one of the reasons why I don't necessarily like to have internal agencies. I want the guys that work as creative partners for us to be completely different than who we are internally. And I don't think anyone in my building would be able to come up with Google Home of the Whopper, Whopper Neutrality, Proud Whopper, Bullying Junior, Burning Stores, which are all ideas that were done by Anselmo's team when he was at David, or even like now on Popeyes. You know, like I don't think we would be able to come up with the Ivy Park or Sweet Dixie Kitchen which just won on the, I think it was on Ad Age, right? I mean, the award about one of the best launch innovations or launch campaigns from last year. Yeah. So I need that diverse thinking, and that's why we work with creative partners from outside. And someone want to talk a little bit about?
Yeah, Anselmo, do you want to talk about it from your point of view?
Yes, I think that I think everything that's happening in the world right now is forcing our industry and every industry to talk about diversity and inclusion. But we work in a creative business, and I think that the more diversity you have, the more creative you're going to be, and that's as simple as that. So I think if you are an ad agency and you want to be creative, it's a no-brainer to embrace diversity at the core. If you have an agency and everyone looks the same, and it's just like a bunch of white guys, to give an example, and they all went to the same school and they all have the same opinion, I think the ideas will pretty much be the same. So the more diverse, the more creative. It's as simple as that. Actually, I think that has been one of our secrets, if you will, in the US, because we are, different. Of course, we over-index in Latino talent because that's our background. At Get Miami right now, we have 13% of Black talent. Not enough. We are in a journey. We still don't have Black talent in leadership positions. We need to get better at it, and we will. But, I think we just need to finally embrace diversity at every agency, because agencies need to reflect the country they operate. Like, if you look at Brazil has like more than 50% of people of color, and there's no agency in Brazil that has 50% of people of color representation. So we have a long way to go, like a long way to go. And everything that's happening in the world, like racism and police brutality, it's happening like very strongly right now in the US, but it also applies in Brazil. It applies like in other countries. It's a global problem. And I think we need to do our part, to finally embrace diversity, not because it's the right thing to do or because, oh my God, I have to, because that's how we're going to become the best agency ever, basically.
Sure. We've got to wrap it up quite soon, guys. I've got a question here for Anselmo from Max on YouTube, which is, are you still dancing? And can you teach us any of your moves?
Well, Fernando says that I don't dance very well. I think I dance pretty well, especially when the time of my life is playing, because that's our soundtrack.
I don't know anyone who dances well, who self-proclaims I dance really well. Usually,
did you ever put it in an ad?
No, because it wouldn't test well, for sure. A huge overpromise, like on his dancing skills, and I don't think Max has anything to learn from that individual when it comes to dance moves.
Well, I guess we'll never know. Okay, we're going to wrap it up there. So thank you both for a really fascinating conversation. I wish we could have gone on for a lot longer, but it's been a really good insight into your partnership. So thanks a lot.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Bye.
Okay. All right. So up next, we've got a special message from one of our sponsors, Miami Ad School, and we will be back right after that.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being part of Ad Age's Future of Creativity event. Right now, you're joining us for a conversation called Create and Cultivate, about diversifying the next generation of talent. I am Heidi Waldesky. I am the Associate Publisher of Ad Age. As we know, creative departments are drastically underrepresented by men and women of color. But graduating more diverse creative talent can mean more talent for agencies to hire. I have with me for this conversation Miami Ad School, who's really helping to change the narrative with their mentorship and training opportunities. They're going to share just how they're doing that, as well as what agencies still have to learn. I've got with me for this conversation Pippa Seacrest, who is the co-founder of Miami Ad School, as well as Asia Burrell, who is a student at Miami Ad School. Pippa and Asia, thank you so much for being part of today's conversation.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
So happy to have you guys. Pippa, I want to start with you. Can you just help ground our audience? Give us a brief overview just quickly of the mission of Miami Ad School and how you're helping to shape future talent.
So our school focuses on helping people become content creators. They can have a specialty in art direction design, copywriting, or maybe they just want to be able to do all of those things and go and work in the new kind of companies that are embracing that.
That's great. And so as we're kind of talking about really how we build this next generation of diverse creative talent, this is not a new concept to you guys, right? Like you sort of discovered this back in 2015. You really felt that this was something you needed to make the focus of the school. Can you tell us about the diversity initiative that you've been working on since then and the lessons you've learned with this program?
Absolutely. We felt that we were in a great place to actually help bring more diversity into the industry. Because if we graduated more minority talent, agencies would have more talent to hire. But when we looked at our own population of minority students, it was 19%. So we put together a plan that our goal was to make it about 50%. So it really reflected what was happening in our country, so that there would always be a group of minorities, never just one. And through scholarships and promoting creative careers, we increased it to 53%, which doing that, when we started this, it was scary. We didn't know how to do it. We made mistakes along the way, but we just felt this is what needed to be done and stuck with it and listened and got to where we wanted to be diversity.
Right. Because it seems like you really made it a fabric in how you approach students. What are some of the most important lessons you've learned about the best ways to grow that number? Because really, it's more than just a number, right? It's really about, today's ways of thinking require fresh talent. So what are some of the most important things that you've learned just in like how to really speak to students to get them into the industry and to let them know this is a place for them?
Oftentimes students entering the industry, they've never known someone in the industry before. The average minority family earns 20 to 40% less than a white family. And so they may not be in touch with people and the kind of careers that we have. And so they also want careers that are safer usually, like law, medicine, accounting, things that they know that they're going to be able to earn a living. So we just used our graduates as role models and showed that you can have a great career doing this. Then the next thing is getting them placed. And that's where we've learned a lot about how to help these graduates make a transition into the agency world.
Got it. So as we're talking about students, it just so happens we have a student here, Asia.
Hi.
Like your parents, like we're going to talk about you like you're not here. But now I'm actually going to ask you some questions. So Asia, obviously you were a student in Miami Ad School. So as this program has evolved, as the school has evolved, really so has the very culture of the student body. I understand that you guys have launched something called Mad United. Can you tell me about that? Can you tell me what's behind that and what you guys are doing?
Certainly. Thank you so much for having me on the show, Heidi. And of course, thank you again, Pippa. Mad United is just a temporary name that we have currently. We're going to solidify that really soon. But just the initiative that myself and two other students, Sarah and Victoria, came up with, we wanted to come together and make sure that we cultivate an environment where minorities and persons of color were able to have a sense of community there, where we're all able to continue to uplift each other and make sure that it's inclusive for all students, obviously, and we're able to just go ahead and again have a sense of culture and just really impact this industry that we're about to go in. If we're talking about diversity and inclusion and changing things, I think that, obviously the teaching starts at the school that you're currently at. So just by getting it there before we're able to go graduate and go off into the industry, so that we're able to go ahead and change it for those that come behind us.
I really love that. And so, I think in part of our conversations and preparing for today's talk, you had said something really interesting in terms of how students see themselves being able to influence, like as you're about to go into the industry workforce. You said something about being the voices of the mass media. Can you tell me a little bit more about that, about how you're viewing this generation of talent as you're looking to come into the workplace?
Certainly. Not saying that the generation before us, wasn't doing their job or anything, but when you look at the current generation that we have now, I just think it's important that as we're getting ready to take the baton from the generation that came before us, that we're addressing the problem and acknowledging what's going on. And we're making sure that we're keeping that in the forefront of our mind, as well as doing the best work that we can, because advertising is I would say, a very serious industry. We are the voice of the masses. A campaign that I saw not too long ago was where Burger King came together and they prompted you on an app to go to McDonald's and ask for a Whopper. So normally you, myself, or Pippa may not do something like that, but that's just the kind of power that we have in advertising. And I think that we just have to realize that, and realize that we're sending out the right narrative and the right message. If we're talking about being diverse and inclusive, make sure that you're promoting minorities and persons of color, making sure that you're cultivating them and putting them in leadership positions so that we can all change the narrative. I know before they were just saying, you don't want a bunch of non-persons of color in the room because you're going to get the same message. So since we're speaking to the masses aren't just one color, they're many colors. So we just have to make sure that we're addressing all of those messages. It's really important.
Thank you for that. So Pippa, I feel like this is really a conversation about like how we approach our craft too, right? So, we've talked about how as today's up and coming makers, they're not art directors, they're not copywriters, they're not necessarily just UX people, like they're all of those things, right? They're having to kind of put it all in their minds. Can you talk a little bit, because like you're in there, you're helping them shape their work. How are you seeing this generation of talent really utilize their creative strengths, and how they define and approach craft?
They're very very comfortable and fluid in their approach to things, and they can be creating all different aspects of it, and they want to do that. And so I think that that's the real key to it, is we give them lots of tools and interdisciplinary training. Then they can go and intern in agencies, so they're practicing that experience, and that's really the key to it, and they're able to network. We're finding, though, that when those minority students enter the real world, there's a disconnect, because often when they get offered a position for like internship to full-time or things like that, the amount that they're being offered doesn't allow them to be able to take the job. They don't have a safety net. And so companies need to be aware of that and be able to give them moving expenses or in advance so they can do their first and last month's rent, because often the graduates aren't able to afford to take these really great jobs at great agencies.
That's such a great point. So what are agencies really missing? Like, what are some, like, if you've got, like, listen, if you're going to take away anything from this conversation, like, here's an impactful step that agencies can take to make sure we're creating inclusive spaces for this up and coming talent, because you're doing it. So how do we get them in there, and what can agencies really take away and learn from this conversation?
We get calls all the time from companies saying, we need senior level talent, minority talent. Can you introduce us to some of our graduates? But there isn't enough at that level. This talent has to be grown. And so we invite companies to join that conversation with us, come and guest speak at the school, build that relationship with that talent now, so that when they graduate in a year, you've helped groom them into the kind of creatives that you need for the brands that you're working with through guest speaking or internships. And that's really how you're going to diversify your company, is bringing in the new talent that's there and waiting.
Thank you so much for that. Actually, speaking of new talent, Asia, I understand you're graduating this semester.
It's my last quarter. I'm so excited.
So just in case you don't have a gig already lined up, you're ready to go. I have a feeling you're just going to be making such a tremendous impact on the industry, and I personally look forward to seeing what you'll bring to it. Pippa, where can people go to find out more about working with Miami Ad School and what you guys can kind of have to offer and consult and teach agencies? Where can we go to learn more about that?
Absolutely. There's a link provided that takes you to our whole diversity program and kind of the research we put together that we learned, even though we made a ton of mistakes and are still learning a lot. And with that, you'll have the whole picture, or they can email me at pippa@miamiadschool.com. I'm super happy to work with anybody on this initiative.
You are an extremely nice and accommodating person. And thank you so much for being transparent and sharing your process. I know it's really important for us all, not just to share what's working, but what hasn't worked. So thank you so much for being part of this conversation. Thank you for your open and honest answers. And we'll see you guys hopefully soon. I don't know, maybe in person. We always love running into Miami at school at events. So hopefully we'll get to be able to see you guys soon. Thanks everyone for tuning into this panel. I'm going to send you guys back to Anne Christine Diaz, who is our creativity editor. Thanks so much for watching this conversation.
Thanks, Heidi, and thank you, Pippa, and thanks to Asia. And I hope that you get to graduate in a fashion that really celebrates your accomplishments. And I hope to see you out in the world someday and writing about you guys. So since the topic of this day is craft, we wanted to bring the creators of one of the year's most exquisite ads, Apple Bounce, here to talk about how they made it. So today we're going to welcome Greg Greenberg from TBWA Media Arts Lab, Group Creative Director. And we have Oscar Hudson, the director of the film from Pulse Films. Hey, Oscar.
Hello.
And we have Dav Karpasian, who is the global president of commercials and branded content at Pulse Films.
That's right. Hello.
Thank you so much for joining us, guys, and congratulations. The spot has done really well so far. I think you got the Black Cube at Art Directors Club. So,
yeah, good stuff.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
So, this is my favorite thing to do, to dive deep into the work. And as Fernando and Anselmo said earlier, I'm kind of an ad nerd, and I love to dissect how something great is made. So that's why we brought you guys here today. So Apple is a company that sets a high bar for its work. And within that world, within that universe, this is one of the best of the best. So can you tell us about how it all started? Greg, take us from the beginning. What was the brief?
Yeah, I mean, we've done a couple of I guess we call it audio, that being AirPods and HomePod ads over the years, and I think every year we want to do one. I think there's never an expectation that we have to. Obviously, AirPods sell themselves, but it's really about if we can do something great. And so the brief, it's when you look at all the work we've done, it's simple. It's the transformative power of music and how it changes and affects the way you interact with the world. And that really was the brief. And I think it's just about, can we top what we've done before? And so that was what was given to the creative teams. It's a high challenge from both Apple and from internally, that we're not going to do something unless it's great. And luckily the team came with just such a super simple insight. This particular ad was for the wireless AirPods, which had just come out, and I think the idea that the AirPods were just had a little bit more air to them was kind of where they started from. And I think when you with Apple, you kind of know when an idea is awesome when in one image you can kind of see the whole thing already, and that's what they brought. They had just a guy bouncing, and the notion that once you put him in, the whole world has give. And I think there was a really super smart insight into that visually, but also just, I think from a feeling standpoint, I think, I have two kids, and you watch them jumping and playing, and I think we all probably wish we could somehow get back to that mental state. And I think music can bring you there. And so the idea that this guy is experiencing the same joy that in a sense a kid could experience when he's on a playground, but the playground happens to be the world, just seemed like such a great way to evoke a feeling in people. And so that's kind of, once you see it, I think it's one of the rare reviews I've had where we showed it to Apple and it was just, yep, that's it, move on, do it. Like I don't get that very often internally, even at Mal, certainly not when we show work to Apple. And it kind of was everyone, the minute they saw it was like, that's the one we have to do. So it was kind of the stars aligned a little bit.
So how did Oscar and Pulse Films come into this? The decision on a director is super important.
Yeah.
It could mean the difference between good and really bad. So tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, we I think the one thing we take pride in is that it's the idea overall. It's the idea and the execution and the vision over anything. And so we obviously went out to a bunch of directors, but really it was who had the best work, who had the best vision, who did we trust. And I think a lot of things with Oscar, we had a lot of really talented directors, including Oscar, that treated on this, who all had great ideas. But what Oscar, I think, came back with that we got us excited was both, we felt from the very beginning that it had to be practical. Like you had to feel he really was bouncing in the world. It wasn't some CG fest. It wasn't trickery. It was legitimately like he was on a playground. And so that Oscar's vision completely aligned with that. And I think the craft he put in both the treatment and his vision was exactly where our heads were at. And I think in some senses, we feel, certainly working on Apple, you feel the stakes all the time. You gotta deliver. But I think with Oscar, knowing that like this was like one of his first huge jobs, that he felt the same stakes we felt. In a way, you're all kind of in it together, and I think that's a good thing. And so once you had someone who almost felt more like a peer with you than just the director off in the corner, someone who wanted to figure out with you, and like his vision was so great, I think it kind of became a no-brainer to pick him.
So Oscar, tell us about when you saw the brief. What was your reaction? What came into your mind, and was it an automatic decision to go in camera? Was there any consideration for effects at all?
Well, yeah, the brief was one of those rare ones you see where it's an obvious choice from the start. Sometimes you have to sit with a project and think about it and find your way into it. But this was one of those ones where just immediately it was quite clear that what they wanted out of it aligned pretty directly with what I would consider like my natural approach to something, which is in camera often. That's kind of, I guess I've built a body of work around practical effects and how those ways of sort of making practical effects line up with storytelling in fun ways. And this just the outline for the idea just filled with opportunities to have fun and to play with visuals and who wouldn't want to play with trampolines in that way? And as for CG, it's never particularly my first thing to look to. I mean, CG is always there to enhance and to improve things, but I think with this one in particular, it felt really important to have a really tactile kind of sense of surface and movement, and I guess like straight away there just seemed to be this way of doing it, of just sticking trampolines in the floor. So why wouldn't you do that? Sometimes the easiest solution is I say easiest solution, it was actually an incredibly complicated solution, but the most straightforward seeming one can sometimes be the best.
I don't know if trampolines stuck in the floor would be the immediate obvious solution for anyone. But we just got some shout outs. There's Luca from Tunisia and Hope from New York, Desmond from Nigeria, Garrett from Arizona, Sheila from Nepal, Ruchi from Toronto, and Megan from Texas. So, hey guys, if anyone has questions, share them on social. We're digging into Apple Bounce. I'm Anne-Christine Diaz, creativity editor at Ad Age. I'm here with Greg Greenberg, group creative director at TBWA Media Arts Lab, Oscar Hudson, director at Pulse Films, and Dav Karbassian, president of commercials at Pulse Films. And we're talking about Apple Bounce. We're diving deep into how it was made. So Oscar, you just mentioned how the decision to go in camera was a very tricky process. So can you guys share a little bit about that? What was the biggest, or maybe, tell us what was the biggest challenge of fulfilling this decision? What dig into that? Like, how did you?
Well, I suppose the thing about doing things in camera is that you need to plan thoroughly. It's you have to make your decisions ahead of time rather than thinking, oh, we'll shoot a bunch of stuff and figure it out later. And so when you're trying to design set pieces that that are specific, you have to make specific bits of physical set that only work in one way. And so it meant that we had to take the time and effort to really plan out exactly what each action was going to be and how we were going to film it. Of course, it was a monster of a set build, and we made a decision to rather than building, say, 6 individual sets for each individual sequence, we did do that, but we sort of combined them so that they became this kind of immersive trampoline city space, which gave us that little bit more depth to the environment. It was very, very important because some of the commercial is shot on location and some of it's shot, well, most of it's shot in the studio, some of it's on location. It's very important that those two worlds blended, and so it was pretty key that that those sets felt large and that there was a real sense of scale and they didn't feel too contained. Like, you know, the first shot when the guy leaves his house, that's that whole scene is a physical set, which is, I mean, it was an incredible space to walk around. It really was mind blowing.
It was wasn't it the largest airplane hangar in the Ukraine, I believe, Oscar? It was something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah.
It was certainly very large.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Dav, in terms of having to facilitate this overall production, what were the challenges for you guys as a production company?
Yeah, I mean, like the guys just said, I think we started, you know, I mean, believe it or not, we even started thinking about going on location, digging holes, and, you know, how do you get trampolines into an environment? And we landed on the most controllable approach, which Oscar just outlined, which was build a set which is 5 foot, you know, which is raised 5 foot high, so you could get trampolines in different places. And it was an extraordinary undertaking. We were moving at speed in a way as well. We weren't, you know, this set was built really fast by an amazing team through Radioactive Films in the Ukraine. Amazing craftsmanship. I mean, the build was just extraordinary, and there's a lovely making of this film that kind of brings it to life. But I'll never forget that feeling of walking on set into that airport hangar and walking into trampoline land. It was incredible, and you couldn't tell which was, you know, where the trampolines were, where they weren't, and, you know, there's bendy lampposts and bouncy zebra crossings. It was funny, and because it was practical, it also meant that you could actually do it. You could stand on these trampolines, and then you realize the physical challenge of what the talent had to kind of perform.
I was going to say,
it was amazing.
Did you consider turning it into a theme park afterwards?
Yeah.
And charging admission.
A kids theme park, or yeah, probably.
So we have a bunch of questions from social, actually. One of them, which was one of my questions as well, why the decision to go black and white on this film?
Well, I mean, we have a history with AirPods. We did one, it must have been almost 4 years ago, called Stroll, that was in black and white. That was similar in the sense of like a practically effect done film. But I think in general, like with one, AirPods just look much cooler in black and white. I think they stand out more. So, I mean, that's sort of like one general feeling, is that when you're doing such a simple but beautiful and exciting and fun and film, you also don't want to make sure, like with AirPods, since it's not a product you like hold in your hand or use, they're kind of just there in your ears, that they can stand out. And I think when it's in black and white, they stand out more. And so you know, we never really looked at this as a sequel to what we've done before, but it felt like with AirPods in general, like because of the story, and I think you know, when we had pitched it, and I think similar to the way that Oscar had shown his treatment, there was a bit of a almost a Buster Keaton vibe to it, like, and I think we liked that somewhat of homage with black and white to like a simpler time when you could just listen to music and it could take over your world. So there was a bunch of reasons, but those were a couple of them.
back to trampoline land. How much testing was involved in that to make sure it looked right? Like, did it start out okay? Was it like, oh, we got it? Or was that a process in itself?
It's always a process. It's always a process. Things never go right straight away. You know, we have to test and develop everything. And we tried to factor in as much time as possible for all of that. So we had, and that both comes from the choreography performance end, with working with the actors and making sure that they're able to do what they need to do, and they've got enough time to practice the routines, but not only practice, but actually develop and contribute to what they're doing as well. But also developing the tactile bouncy surfaces too, because yeah, not only did they have to look right, they had to work right too. You had to be able to get the adequate amount of bounce out of those surfaces, and we experimented with all the types of painted tarpaulin, like covering up trampolines, and we sort of had to mix and match our approach to what was appropriate for each individual scene. You know, certain scenes you had to bounce super duper high, and we couldn't put anything too thick over the trampoline, and other scenes where it didn't matter so much, we had to design. For example, there's a shot from underground looking up through the subway grate. That's actually a totally custom like lattice of bungee cords set into rubber. And similarly with the lamppost, that's an incredible feat of engineering made by the team in Ukraine. They built a whole articulated kind of bendy lamppost that was then covered in silicone and had a rope running through it from underground so they could wilt over like that. And I mean, it's a remarkable achievement on all fronts. But that's how all the best projects are like that. It's a kind of incredible like synthesis of all the different departments coming together, and it sort of feels effortless. Well, actually, it feels effortless more at this point when we look back on it. At the time.
There's something really interesting that we've done that I feel, at least on all the audio, and I mainly on AirPods and HomePod, where like in a way, if you look at them, they're the few Apple products where you don't really need to physically interact with them to use them. Like there are barely any buttons, if any. You just kind of take them out and put them in, and they work. And I think there's a simplicity to how you experience it that on the back end you realize was a massively insane technical feat. And I think with the work we've done on them, there's a pretty nice correlation that like anything you see, it feels simple. Bounce, the HomePod work, other AirPod stuff we've done, but the work that's gone on behind them is maddeningly crazy to make it feel that nice and simple. So it's kind of a nice correlation in terms of when we do stuff, we probably give ourselves the harder way because it feels like it's doing justice to the thing we're advertising.
Yeah, that's true of a lot, or probably all of the Apple work, which is why we named you guys our Creativity Agency of the Year this year. The casting, I wanted to talk about the casting. That also was another key element of this spot. The actor in it was so graceful, beautiful moves. So can you talk about that process of picking him for this?
Yeah, certainly. His name was Mehdi Baki, and we found him. So we got to choreograph the piece. We enlisted Johan Bourgeois, who is a theatre maker who has a lot of a background in working with trampolines specifically. And I mean, he makes a wonderful work, and it's all based around sort of physical play and sort of kind of custom designed sets and things like that. And we brought him in specifically for his experience with trampolines, and through him we were able to access a kind of a number of performers who are comfortable on trampolines, but not just comfortable on the trampolines, because it was, I mean, I very much didn't want the spot to become a big kind of showy offy piece about gymnastics and how high you can go and how perfect your form can be. And that was a big part of the decision to go with Mehdi specifically, because he wasn't the best trampolinist that we saw, the most naturally, like it wasn't his forte compared to some of the others who were a bit more technically perfect, but he was just so much more human, and he had the way of moving. He was very good at the trampoline, just not sort of Olympic gymnast level. And he brought to it a real sense of humanity, and bearing in mind that Buster Keaton and his work was such a sort of important, well, for me and for everyone else, I think a really important undercurrent that ran through the whole piece. He brought that kind of that sense of clown to it, and that humanity and that kind of personality, and he's very charismatic, and he was great.
It's a good example, I think, of like every decision really made, and this is a real testament to Mal, the team, and Apple. Just like every decision was made in what will make this film better. And I think that's a good example, because like Oscar said, Mehdi, there were other trampolinists who could have done some of the stunts better and easier, but Mehdi had that face, had that sort of little Peter Sellers to him, which I think with the wrong casting, that film wouldn't be as good. Same with the music, like, again, it's easy in every project to kind of default to, oh, well, we can pick a track later. But like the difference of having a track and choreographing to a track, the action, the edit is huge, and you can feel that. And I think that's why this film is one of those real rare sort of examples of really celebration of craft. Like every department, the art director, the VFX, even though we didn't go down a CG route. I think the job Framestore did to, the invisible effects to tidy up. Like I said, the music, the talent, the decision of black and white, just really, really great. And I also just wanted to say, like, it's easy to, Greg was talking about the directors. We were up against some big names on this one, and some of them I'm friends with, and it was amazing that they backed us, because it's not easy to go with the unusual suspect, the one who perhaps hasn't done all the ads hasn't got the big ads on the reel, but there is, like Greg said, and I think the team identified an advantage to that. And I just thought that was pretty amazing. It doesn't happen all the time. And the biggest compliment, I think, was one of the directors who was pitching on it was, called us up and just went, wow, like, you guys did something special there. Oscar did something special. And that was really nice thing to hear.
I actually do want to ask about the role of the production company itself, because oftentimes, the ones who get highlighted are the agency and the director, and maybe the unsung heroes or the production companies themselves. Can you talk a little bit about that? What your contribution was from your perspective, Dev, and then Greg, for example, that role from the agency perspective.
Yeah. I mean, on this job, I think, Oscar's, he's got such a clear vision. And when you've got such a sort of very simple idea and very, the job of the production company is to deliver on that vision, protect the idea, and protect, every step of the way. And this job, like the guys said, it wasn't the easiest route, that's for sure. There's definitely easier ways to make a version of this film, but not a better, not necessary to make the better version. So our job is to navigate the process and support the director and make sure we're keeping on brief. I think, again, I know everyone always says this when they're talking about, like, in hindsight, and I've worked on many jobs, and I've actually worked both sides of the fence in terms of agency, but like the collaboration and the kind of respect and for the process and in backing each other was pretty amazing on this job. Like, it really was. There was never an awkward comment that didn't make sense that we had to address. It was always done with the spirit of making something very special and uncompromising on the craft.
Yeah, I mean, I may be biased, but I personally feel we both work with the best producers in the industry, and we have internally the best producers in the industry. I think mainly because they put up with us, but I think there's so much that goes into a job like this, and it does. I think, and you're right, a lot of it falls on the shoulders of production, because in terms of us and Oscar, it's sort of like, wouldn't this be cool if blah, and then that causes a giant trail of crazy that someone has to figure out. And I think that they always, on either side, both on Pulse and internally, the team we had took it in stride, and we're like, okay, we'll figure it out. And there wasn't a question of like, why are we doing this? Why do I have to deal with this? This is a lot to handle. It was all in the spirit, again, of making something great, and everyone kind of just wanted to put their best foot forward. And I think that's what made it great. But you're right, they are the unsung heroes, and I do want to give them a shout out, because it wouldn't have happened without. I mean, it was a crazy production, and a lot of that fell on production to sort of behind the scenes make sure everything went smoothly. So 100%.
So music is a key element of the film, obviously. We have a question from Tung on LinkedIn. How do you decide what kind of music fits this idea?
Well, I mean, I guess I'll start because we kind of came to with Oscar. We'd worked through this with Oscar, but audio project. We about how these combination of art, movement, and music, they kind of have to work in tandem together. An artistic vision, some sort of performance, and an amazing track. And the track, when 1/3 of it is the music, you can't wait to the end to do it. And so there's a pretty exhaustive process. We have an amazing music team internally and up at Apple that are always on the pulse of artists and tracks that are about to come out or that are right for an idea. And so once the idea had been settled, we kind of went into pretty, way into the early pre-production process before we'd really figured out even the film. With Oscar, there was a massive listening sessions and finding the track that really fit the vibe, because we felt, and we feel on all these sorts of projects, you have to have the track before you shoot. You have to choreograph and plan it to the track. So and it's a hard decision to go, that's the song, without seeing anything on film. But I think to Apple's credit, they've, on all the ones we've done, really, they've understood that it's so integral to the piece being good. So we went through rounds and rounds and rounds and rounds. I mean, I don't know how many listening sessions we did, but with Oscar, but we finally settled on what we all felt was right and just pushed it through.
Cool. So you guys put together an amazing behind the scenes video, which we're going to share in this stream story on adage.com. So anyone out there watching, if you want to know more about the spot, check that out. And I think we're running out of time, but one final question for all of you guys, and this is from Charles on LinkedIn. How do you improve your level of creative thinking? Any suggestions for films, books, podcasts, art you consume to stay original? Let's kick that off with Oscar.
I mean, I guess, if the idea is to stay original, one of the, I think the worst things you can do is get too consumed by the specific kind of area you're working in. So if you want to make good ads, perhaps start looking outside of ads to find find things that inspire you. I mean, I personally, I think a lot of my interest in physical effects and that kind of stuff actually does come from physical theater. I have a lot of friends who work in physical theater, and I think you can get a lot of interesting ideas for approaches and things by looking in different spaces. As for recommendations, an appropriate one for now would be Johan Bourgeois' work, who's involved with the film. He makes wonderful work, really, really great stuff. All of it with playing with physics effectively and building cool contraptions and messing around with them. So check out Johan Bourgeois.
Cool. Dav, what about you?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's what's special about our industry, isn't it? Is you really can take inspiration from places and bottle it in creating something very special. I think, Oscar has a unique approach, in terms of working magic, really. Like we call him the Wizard of Oscar at Pulse. His work is like a magic.
I didn't know that.
And it's behind his back. But it is a magic trick, and there's something special. It's not like the execution isn't the wow bit. The execution is something you feel. And I think sometimes when you do things practically, even though you don't know it, and when you see this making of the film, you'd be like, wow, okay, I didn't realize that was how that was done. And that's not the point, but it does create a feeling that I think is special. And so, I think like Oscar said, like bringing the outside world in is always great. And the Buster Keaton references for this were really, really helpful. And you can feel echoes of that. If there's something specific, I would point to the Truffaut interviews with Hitchcock as just something as an interesting history of film and how that evolved into sound and then into color and the practical effects used there. Just as one that I kind of always found like was an amazing source of reference in filmmaking, going back to the basics essentially.
Cool. And what about you?
I mean, the way I would find inspiration 5 months ago and the way now are obviously very different things. But I think speaking in the present situation, I think that I think you talked about original thinking. So much of that is just getting out of the way you think, and you're, especially now everyone's at home. It's so easy to fall into the stuff you would watch, the stuff you would read, the stuff you would listen to. I think I try to ask friends and family, what are you watching? What are you reading? What are you listening to? Because for all intents, there's a good chance that it's something I wouldn't have considered. And then I'm reading or watching or looking at something I wouldn't have thought of before. And I think that immediately opens a little piece extra inside you that you hadn't thought about. So I think right now it's really just exploring different points of view and getting that from people that I respect and know, and then trying to consume all that, because there's a lot of sitting around inside right now. So.
What was the best recommendation you got over the pandemic?
In terms of like something to watch?
Yeah, or read.
I guess one that I kind of got sucked into that I wouldn't have thought about. There's some show on Hulu called Devs that obviously if you work in the tech field is probably timely, but I didn't even know it existed. Someone had told me about it on our team, and it's Nick Offerman in a crazy intense acting role. But I think my wife probably was like waking up at 2 a.m. going, "What are you doing?" Because I ripped through it in like 2 days. So I highly recommend it. Yeah.
Great. No, I'm not going to get any sleep tonight. Well, thank you so much, Greg, Oscar, and Dav. This has been fascinating. Again, I wish we could talk about it more, but for those of you who want to see more, again, check out that behind the scenes in this story. And we look forward to seeing what all of you come out with next. Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Take care. Bye.
Bye. Also, a reminder to our audience, join us back here at 3 p.m. and we're going to have a director's roundtable talking about more great work with Cal Maddock, Kim Garrick, and Henry Alex Rubin. And we also have a deep dive into IKEA's Visibles with McCann. So see you guys in a little bit.